There's nothing quite like settling in for the night with a story that makes you think, wait, really? But in a gentle, soothing way that doesn't keep you awake. Tonight's story does exactly that. It reveals something so surprising about pyramid building that you'll drift off to sleep with your mind quietly amazed by what humans accomplished 4,500 years ago. Picture this. You're standing in the blazing Egyptian sun, limestone dust coating your throat, the sound of thousands of workers echoing across the desert. You're not a slave. You're not being whipped. Instead, you're laughing with your work gang as you carve your names into a massive stone block. The Friends of Khufu and the Drunkards of Menkaure. Wait, what? That's not the story of pyramid building you learned in school. Is it? For centuries, we've believed that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were built by countless slaves, whipped and beaten under the scorching sun, dying by the thousands to build monuments to Pharaoh's egos. But what if I told you that modern archaeology has revealed something completely different? What if the real story of pyramid building was actually about pride, community, skilled craftsmanship, and workers who were so respected they were buried with honor, right next to the very monuments they built? What if the greatest construction project in human history wasn't built by slaves at all, but by free citizens who took such pride in their work that they left humorous graffiti inside the stones, showing their camaraderie and spirit? Tonight, you're going to live through the real story of pyramid building. You're going to walk in the sandals of a seasonal worker, experience the sights, sounds, and smells of ancient Egypt, and discover a truth so surprising that it completely changes how we see one of the world's greatest wonders. So settle in, close your eyes, and let me take you back 4,500 years to the banks of the Nile, where your journey as a pyramid builder is about to begin. Before we start Chapter 1, if you're enjoying this journey into ancient Egypt, consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It helps more people discover these untold stories of history. And let me know in the comments, what's the biggest historical fact you later learned was completely wrong? Now, let's begin your story. The year is 2570 BCE. You are Khaemwaset, which means he who appears in Thebes. Though you've never been south to that great city, your world is a small farming village along the Nile, about 30 miles north of the growing monument they're calling the Great Pyramid. You wake before dawn in your mud brick house, the air still cool from the night. Through the small window, you can see the first hint of light touching the eastern horizon. But something is different this morning, something that changes everything. The Nile is rising. You've been watching it for weeks now, as you do every year. First, the water grows darker, carrying silt from the distant mountains of Nubia. Then it begins to creep higher up the banks, day by day, until finally it spills over into your fields. This isn't a disaster. It's a blessing. The annual flood that makes Egypt the richest land in the world. But for you, it means something else entirely. It means your farming season is over for the next 3 months. It means you're free to answer a call that came to your village 2 weeks ago. The Pharaoh Khufu needs workers for his pyramid. You remember the royal messenger who arrived with great ceremony, scrolls in hand, speaking of the divine project rising on the Giza plateau. He spoke of rations that would feed your family better than your farm ever could. He spoke of honor, of serving the God King, of being part of something that would stand forever. But most importantly, he spoke of payment. You're not a slave being conscripted. You're a free Egyptian citizen being offered work. The difference isn't just legal. It's everything. You can refuse. You can negotiate. You can leave if you're mistreated. This isn't forced labor. It's seasonal employment on the grandest scale ever attempted. As you prepare for the journey, your wife Nebet helps you pack your few possessions into a reed basket. A spare kilt, a wooden comb, a small knife, some dried fish for the journey. Your children, still sleepy, gather around as you prepare to leave. How long will you be gone, father? Asks your youngest daughter, Essie. 3 months, you tell her, crouching down to her level. When the flood waters recede and the fields are ready for planting again, I'll return, and I'll bring back enough grain and beer to feed us through the entire growing season. This is how it works. This is how Egypt has always worked. When the Nile floods, farmers become builders. When the waters recede, builders become farmers again. It's a rhythm as old as the civilization itself, and you're part of a tradition that stretches back to the first pharaohs. But as you walk toward the Nile to catch the boat that will take you north to Giza, you have no idea what awaits you. You don't know that you're about to become part of the most ambitious construction project in human history. You don't know that the camp you're heading to is larger and more organized than most cities. You don't know that the food you'll eat will be better than what you have at home. And you certainly don't know that 4,500 years later, people will still be telling your story, though they'll get almost everything wrong about what your life was really like. The boat is already crowded when you arrive at the dock. Dozens of other men from your region, all with the same calloused hands and sun-darkened skin that mark you as a farmer. You recognize some faces, neighbors, friends, the blacksmith from the next village over. This is becoming a reunion of sorts. As the boat pushes off and begins its journey north, one of the older men, Senab, starts talking about his previous stint at the pyramid. This is his 3rd season. First time? He asks you, noting your wide eyes as you take in the other workers. You nod. It's not what you expect, he says with a grin. Nothing like the stories they tell. You'll see. What stories? You wonder, what could possibly be unexpected about hauling stones for a pharaoh's tomb? The Nile flows beneath your boat, carrying you toward a destiny you can't imagine. In the distance, you can already see it, a white gleaming point on the horizon, growing larger as you approach. The pyramid, still under construction, already dwarfs everything around it. But you don't yet know that you're looking at something that will outlast every empire that comes after it. You don't know that you're about to become part of a workforce so skilled and organized that modern engineers still study their methods. You don't know that your work gang will leave its mark, literally carved in stone, a joke that will survive millennia. All you know is that the flood season has come, and with it, opportunity. As the boat carries you north toward Giza, toward the greatest construction site in the world, you close your eyes and let the rocking motion lull you. Tomorrow, your real journey begins. But what kind of journey will it be? The boat docks at Giza harbor just as the sun reaches its peak. But this isn't the natural shoreline you know from your village. This is something impossible. A harbor that shouldn't exist. You step off the boat onto stone-paved docks that stretch for hundreds of yards along an artificial canal. The Nile doesn't naturally flow this close to the Giza plateau. But here it is, carrying boats loaded with massive limestone blocks from quarries at Tura, granite from far-off Aswan, and men like you from villages all along the river. How? You start to ask Senab, but he just grins. They built it, he says simply. Channels, harbors, ramps, everything. You think they're just piling up stones out there? This is the most organized construction project the world has ever seen. As you follow the crowd of new arrivals up from the harbor, the scale of what you're seeing begins to hit you. This isn't just a pyramid being built. This is an entire civilization temporarily relocated to serve one purpose. Ahead of you stretches what can only be called a city, but not like the small towns you know. This is laid out in perfect order, straight streets, planned neighborhoods, specialized districts. The air fills with the sounds of industry, hammering, sawing, voices calling in dozens of dialects from across Egypt and beyond. And the smells, incredible smells. Fresh bread baking, beer brewing, roasted meat, spices you can't identify. Your stomach growls. You haven't eaten since dawn. A man with a scribe's palate approaches your group. He's clearly educated, clean-shaven, wearing fine linen, a writing reed tucked behind his ear. In your village, you might see such a man once or twice a year, usually collecting taxes. Here, there seem to be dozens of them. New arrivals from the Fayum region? He asks, consulting a papyrus scroll. Several men nod, including you. Excellent. We've been expecting you. I'm a Menemheb workforce administrator for the Eastern work gangs. You'll be assigned to teams based on your skills and experience. Have any of you worked on royal projects before? A few hands go up, including Senebs. Good. Those with experience will be team leaders. The rest of you will be assigned to mixed groups, veterans and newcomers together. No one works alone here, and no one works without training. He pauses, looking at your confused faces. You look surprised. What did you expect? That we'd hand you a rope and point you at a stone block? He laughs. Gentlemen, you're about to become part of something that's never been attempted before. We're not just building a pyramid. We're building the largest structure ever conceived. That doesn't happen by accident. As you follow a Menemheb through the workers' city, because that's what this is, you realize a planned urban settlement. He points out the various districts. Bakeries there. We bake enough bread daily to feed 30,000 people. Breweries beyond that. Beer is safer than water and provides necessary calories for heavy labor. Those long buildings are dormitories. Skilled craftsmen get private quarters, but most workers share space in organized barracks. You pass a structure that looks like nothing you've ever seen. It's larger than the temple in your village, but built of wood and reed matting rather than stone. What's that? You ask. Medical facility, Amenemheb replies casually. We have physicians, surgeons, even specialists for treating work injuries. Broken bones, cuts, sprains, all treated immediately. Can't afford to lose trained workers to preventable disabilities. This stops you in your tracks. Medical care? For workers? In your village, if you broke a bone, you either healed crooked or died. The idea that someone would actually treat injured laborers seems impossible. But Seneb nods knowingly. Told you it wasn't what you expected, he says. Wait until you see the food portions. You're assigned to a work gang called the Friends of Khufu, one of dozens of teams, each with its own humorous name. Your team leader is a weathered man named Jetty who's been here since the project began 5 years ago. Rule 1. He tells your group of 20 new workers as you gather in the shade of a temporary shelter. We work hard, but we work smart. No heroes. No one dies for a pyramid. Anyone who takes stupid risks gets sent home immediately. Rule 2. We're a team. You help each other. You share water. You watch for heat exhaustion. The man next to you is your responsibility, and you're his. Rule 3. Take pride in your work. Every stone you move, every channel you dig, every rope you pull is part of something that will stand for eternity. Your children's children's children will point to this pyramid and know their ancestor helped build it. He gestures toward the pyramid, now visible in all its growing glory from where you sit. But what you see isn't the rough stone construction you expected. The lower courses are already finished, and they're covered in gleaming white limestone, polished to a mirror finish. In the afternoon sun, the completed portions actually hurt to look at directly. When it's finished, Jetty continues, "This pyramid will shine like a star that fell to earth. Ships on the Nile will see it from 20 miles away. It will be a beacon visible from the borders of Egypt." You stare at the monument, trying to understand its scale. From here, the workers climbing around on it look like ants. The stones they're moving, each one weighs more than several cattle combined. Yet teams of men are positioning them with apparent precision. "How do we move something that heavy?" you ask. Jetty smiles. "Ah, that's tomorrow's lesson. Tonight, you eat, you rest, you get to know your teammates. Because tomorrow, you begin learning secrets that only pyramid builders know." As the sun begins to set, you're led to the dining area. Another revelation. This isn't workers grabbing scraps and fighting for sustenance. This is organized meal service on a massive scale. Long tables, designated seating areas, servers bringing food in order. And the food itself, fresh bread, still warm from the ovens. Roasted beef, actual meat, not the occasional scrap you might get at a festival. Onions, garlic, dates, fresh fish from the Nile. And beer, not the thin, sour brew you're used to, but rich, thick beer that fills your belly and makes you feel strong. "This is what we eat every day?" you ask Seneb in amazement. "Every day," he confirms. "Takes a lot of food to move 2.5 million stone blocks. They figured out early that well-fed workers accomplish more than hungry ones." As night falls, you lie on your reed mat in the dormitory, listening to the sounds of the workers' city settling into evening quiet. Somewhere, men are singing. Somewhere else, someone is telling a story that makes others laugh. Through the walls, you can hear the deep breathing of men tired from honest work. This isn't slavery. This isn't even hardship. This is community, purpose, a chance to be part of something greater than anything you could imagine. But you still don't understand how any of this is possible. How do you move stones that weigh as much as houses? How do you organize 30,000 workers without chaos? How do you feed a temporary city larger than most permanent ones? Tomorrow, you'll start learning the answers. Tomorrow, you'll discover that the pyramid builders have developed techniques so advanced that some of them won't be used again for thousands of years. Tonight, you fall asleep to the sound of the desert wind, your belly full, your body clean, surrounded by men who've welcomed you as family. But what you don't know yet is that you're about to become part of the most sophisticated construction operation in ancient history. You don't know that the methods you'll learn will be so effective that modern engineers still study them. You don't know that the organizational systems keeping this entire operation running are more complex than many government bureaucracies. And you certainly don't know that one day, you'll carve your own joke into a stone block, leaving a bit of your personality embedded in one of history's greatest monuments. What could possibly turn stone moving into something worth joking about? Dawn comes with the sound of wooden clappers and the calls of overseers. But it's not harsh shouting or the crack of whips that you might expect. Instead, it's the rhythmic call and response of men who've done this for months or years. A work song that helps coordinate thousands of people starting their day at once. You emerge from the dormitory to find breakfast already being served. More bread, dried fish, dates, and that strong beer that's becoming your favorite part of this experience. Around you, the worker city is coming alive with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Jetty finds your group finishing your meal. "Ready to learn how to move a mountain?" he asks with a grin. He leads you and your 19 teammates toward the pyramid. But you don't go directly to the base. Instead, you head to what looks like a practice area, a flat stretch of sand where other teams are working with smaller stone blocks, each still larger than anything you've ever tried to move. Before you touch a pyramid block, Jetty explains, You need to understand the principles. This isn't about being strong. This isn't about working harder. This is about working smarter. He points to a limestone block sitting on wooden rollers. It's maybe a quarter the size of the blocks you can see being positioned on the pyramid itself, but still massive, probably 2 tons. Who wants to try moving this by themselves? One of the younger men, Katie, steps forward confidently. He's clearly strong, broader shoulders than most, the kind of build that comes from years of heavy farm work. Katie positions himself behind the block and pushes. The stone doesn't budge. He tries pulling. Nothing. He gets more men to help, and together they manage to rock it slightly, but can't actually move it in any meaningful way. Right, says Jetty. Now watch. He walks to a pile of equipment, ropes, wooden levers, smaller wooden rollers, what looks like a complicated pulley system, and strangest of all, several clay pots filled with what appears to be mud. First lesson, leverage. He positions a wooden beam under one edge of the stone and places a smaller stone as a fulcrum. With apparently little effort, he lifts one side of the massive block. One man can now lift what 20 men couldn't budge. While the block is lifted, other workers slide wooden rollers underneath it. Second lesson, reduce friction. The block now sits on the rollers. With a gentle push, it begins to move. What was impossible is now easy. But that's just the beginning. He shows you how ropes and pulleys can change the direction of force, allowing you to use gravity to help rather than fight against it. He demonstrates how the mud, mixed with just the right amount of water, makes wooden sledges slide across sand as if it were ice. But the most important lesson, he says, gesturing toward the pyramid where you can see teams of men moving enormous blocks with apparent ease, is coordination. He points to a work gang positioning a massive limestone block on the pyramid's growing face. From this distance, you can see they're not struggling or straining. They're moving in perfect unison, like a dance. Listen, he says, even from hundreds of yards away, you can hear it, a rhythmic chant coming from the work teams. Not the desperate gasping of exhausted men, but the steady, measured call and response of a coordinated effort. 20 men pulling randomly can't move a 10-ton block, Jetty explains. 20 men pulling together can make it look effortless. You spend the morning learning these techniques with progressively larger stones. Your team of 20 learns to work as a single unit, responding to called commands, timing your efforts to the rhythm of work songs that are apparently traditional to pyramid building. And it works. By midday, your team is moving stones that seemed impossible at dawn. Not easily. You're all sweating and tired, but efficiently, without the desperate struggle you'd imagined. How did anyone figure this out? You ask Jetty during the midday rest break. Trial and error, he replies. Lots of error. Pharaoh Snefer, Khufu's father, built 3 pyramids before this one. The first one bent in the middle because they didn't understand the stress loads. The second one had the wrong angle and looked odd. The third one, the Red Pyramid, finally got it right. He points toward the pyramid again. Everything you're learning, someone else learned the hard way first. Your work gang name, the Friends of Khufu, that comes from a tradition started during Sneferu's projects. Work gangs started giving themselves humorous names to build spirit decor. It worked so well they kept the tradition. The afternoon brings your first real assignment, helping to move a casing stone to the pyramid itself. These are the polished white limestone blocks that will form the outer surface, each one precisely cut to create the pyramid's smooth, gleaming face. Your block weighs approximately 15 tons, more than 30 cattle. Yet with the techniques you've learned, Your 20-man team moves it steadily from the finishing area to the base of the pyramid, then up a ramp to the level where it will be installed. The ramp itself is another revelation. You'd imagined workers somehow lifting stones straight up the side of the pyramid. Instead, there's an elaborate system of ramps and platforms that spiral around the growing structure, allowing teams to haul blocks up gradually, level by level. But the most amazing moment comes when you reach the installation point. The block has to be positioned with perfect precision. Any error will be visible on the finished surface for eternity. You expect this to be the most difficult part. Instead, it's almost anticlimactic. A team of master masons has already prepared the position. They've mixed a thin layer of mortar that allows the massive block to be slid into place with fine adjustments. Wooden levers make tiny corrections. In less than an hour, your 15-ton stone is perfectly positioned. How accurate is perfect? You ask one of the masons. Less than a finger's width of error across the entire face, he replies. When this pyramid is finished, the surface will be so smooth you could use it as a mirror. As the day ends and you descend the ramp back to the workers' city, you're exhausted but also exhilarated. You've just helped install a piece of what will be one of the most precise constructions in human history. But something still puzzles you. The work is hard, yes, but not impossibly so. The organization is remarkable, but not mystical. Everything you've seen and done today could be accomplished by any group of motivated, well-fed, properly trained workers. So why does pyramid building have such a reputation for impossible difficulty? Why do people speak of it as if it required superhuman effort or mysterious techniques lost to time? During the evening meal, you pose this question to Seneb and the other experienced workers. Because, says an old mason named Tahotep, most people can't imagine this level of organization. They see the finished pyramid and think about moving 2.5 million blocks, and their minds just stop working. They can't conceive of breaking it down into manageable pieces. Also, adds Seneb, most people assume that if something is difficult, it must involve suffering. They can't imagine that we might actually take pride in this work, that we might enjoy the challenge of solving these problems. Tahotep nods. And they definitely can't imagine that the Pharaoh and his architects might actually care about our welfare. They assume that power always means brutality, that great projects always require slaves. But here's the thing, says Jetty, joining the conversation. Slaves couldn't build this pyramid. Slaves don't innovate. Slaves don't solve problems. Slaves don't take pride in precision. What we're doing here requires skill, creativity, and dedication. You can't whip those qualities into someone. As you prepare for sleep, you think about the day. You've learned techniques that make the impossible seem routine. You've been part of a coordinated effort involving thousands of people working toward a single goal. You've helped install a stone that will be part of a structure lasting millennia. And tomorrow, you'll do it again, not because you're forced to, but because you're part of something magnificent. But what you don't yet realize is that you're also part of an early experiment in what we might now call industrial organization. The systems being developed here, specialized teams, detailed planning, quality control, worker welfare, supply chain management, won't be seen again at this scale for thousands of years. You also don't know that the techniques you've learned today are so effective that when European engineers rediscover some of them during the Industrial Revolution, they'll be called revolutionary innovations. Most importantly, you don't know that tomorrow you'll witness something that will challenge everything you think you know about the relationship between workers and pharaohs. What could possibly make you see Khufu himself not as a distant god king, but as someone with very human concerns about this enormous project? 3 weeks into your service at Giza, and you've fallen into the rhythm of pyramid building. Your hands have developed new calluses in just the right places. Your team moves with the efficiency that comes from working together daily. The friends of Khufu have become actual friends, men you trust with your safety and who trust you with theirs. You've learned to read the subtle signs that indicate weather changes, crucial knowledge when you're working with heavy stones on elevated platforms. You've mastered the art of the coordinated pull, where 20 men become a single force. You've even contributed your own suggestions for improving rope placement, earning approval from Jedi and respect from your teammates. But today will be different. Today, something happens that no worker expects and few ever experience. You're working on the pyramid's eastern face, helping to position casing stones for what will eventually be the entrance passage, when you hear an unusual commotion from the base of the structure. Not the organized sounds of work, but something more ceremonial. Make way for His Majesty. The call echoes up the ramps and across the work areas. Workers throughout the pyramid complex stop what they're doing. This isn't a planned inspection. Those happen regularly and everyone knows about them in advance. This is something spontaneous. Khufu himself, whispers Katie, your teammate, the God King. You've never seen the Pharaoh. In your village, you know him only as a name, a concept, a distant divine presence whose word becomes law across all Egypt. The closest you've come to royal presence is seeing his representatives, scribes, tax collectors, officials with the authority to speak in his name. Should we stop working? You ask Jedi. Keep working unless directly told otherwise, he replies. The king comes to see progress, not ceremony. From your position high on the pyramid face, you have an excellent view as the royal procession approaches. But it's not what you expect. There are guards, yes, and officials carrying staffs of office. There are scribes with papyrus ready to record the pharaoh's observations. But the group is smaller than you'd imagined, and moving with purpose rather than pomp. And then you see him, Khufu. He's not the towering, superhuman figure you'd pictured. He's clearly a man of authority. His bearing, his dress, the way others defer to him leave no doubt about his status. But he's also, unmistakably, human, middle-aged, perhaps in his 40s, strong-looking but not gigantic. His face shows intelligence and, is that concern? The pharaoh stops at the base of the pyramid and looks up at the work in progress. From your vantage point, you can see him pointing at various sections, asking questions of his companions. One of them is clearly an architect or engineer. He's carrying measuring tools and consulting what looks like a detailed plan. But then something unprecedented happens. Instead of observing from a distance, Khufu begins climbing one of the ramps. He's coming up here, breathes Senab, working at the next position over. The royal party ascends slowly, stopping frequently for the pharaoh to examine construction details. You can hear him asking specific questions. How are you ensuring the joints remain tight? What's the tolerance on these measurements? How are the work teams coordinating at this level? These aren't the questions of a distant ruler admiring his monument. These are the questions of someone who understands construction challenges and wants to ensure they're being properly addressed. When the royal party reaches your level, you and your teammates stand respectfully but continue holding your ropes and positions. A partially placed casing stone can't be abandoned mid-installation. Khufu approaches your work area. Up close, you can see that his concern is even more evident. His brow is furrowed, and he's studying the stone positioning with intense focus. This joint, he says to his architect, pointing to where your stone meets the previously installed block. It's not perfect. Your heart stops. Have you made an error? Will the pharaoh's displeasure fall on your team? But the architect examines the joint and shakes his head. Within acceptable tolerance. Majesty. Remember, these casing stones will be final polished after installation. Minor irregularities will be corrected then. Khufu nods but doesn't look satisfied. Show me the overall alignment. The architect produces a plumb line and begins checking vertical alignment across multiple courses. You watch the pharaoh's face as the measurements are taken and recorded. We're running a thumb's width off true on this face, the architect reports. Still within correction range, but it needs attention. To your amazement, Khufu turns to Jedi. Team leader, what's your assessment? Jedi straightens but doesn't grovel. Majesty, we've been noticing the deviation developing over the past few days. We believe it's due to uneven settling in the foundation stones from last month's work. We've reported it to the site supervisors. And their response? They're considering options. Majesty. Khufu's expression darkens slightly. Considering options. He turns to one of his officials. Find the site supervisors. I want this deviation corrected before it compounds further. And I want to know why reports from work teams aren't being acted upon immediately. The official hurries away. Khufu turns back to your team. You did right to report the problem. Continue monitoring and report any further issues directly to my architects if you don't get response from supervisors. He's giving ordinary workers permission to bypass the normal chain of command. This is unprecedented. As the royal party prepares to move on, Khufu pauses and looks at the men working around him. His expression is complex, part pride, part worry, part something that looks almost like gratitude. This pyramid will stand for eternity, he says, addressing the workers directly. Every stone you place, every measurement you check, every problem you solve, it all matters. Thousands of years from now, people will judge our civilization by this monument. Make it worthy of Egypt. After the pharaoh leaves, your work area buzzes with conversation. You've just witnessed something that changes your understanding of everything you're doing here. He knows the details, marvels Katie. He actually understands the construction problems. Did you see how worried he looked? Adds another teammate. This matters to him personally. Jedi nods thoughtfully. The pharaoh's divine status depends on completing this pyramid. If it fails, if it's imperfect, if it doesn't last, that reflects on his ability to become a god in the afterlife. He's not just building a tomb. He's building his claim to immortality. That evening, the story of the pharaoh's visit spreads throughout the workers' city. But the versions that emerge reveal something fascinating about how the same event can be interpreted completely differently. Some workers focus on the pharaoh's authority, his ability to demand immediate action on problems, his power to reorganize work procedures with a word. Others talk about his obvious knowledge of construction techniques, how he knew what questions to ask, what problems to look for, what standards to maintain. But you find yourself thinking about something else entirely. The look of worry on Khufu's face. The burden of knowing that this massive project, involving tens of thousands of workers and the resources of an entire kingdom, ultimately succeeds or fails based on a million small decisions and tiny measurements. What happens if we get it wrong? You ask Tahotep during the evening meal. I mean, not just our team, but the whole project. What if something goes fundamentally wrong with the pyramid? The old mason considers this seriously. For us, we go back to our farms when the flood season ends, and we have an interesting story to tell. For the pharaoh, he pauses. Everything he is, everything he represents, everything he's promised about his relationship with the gods, it all depends on this pyramid working perfectly. But he's the pharaoh, protests Katie. He's divine. How can his divinity depend on a construction project? Because, explains Tahotep, the pharaoh's divinity isn't just declared, it's demonstrated. The pyramid isn't just a tomb. It's proof that Khufu can command the forces necessary to build something eternal. It's evidence that the gods support his reign. If this pyramid crumbles, or if it's built badly, or if it fails to last, then maybe Khufu wasn't as divine as he claimed. This puts everything in a new perspective. You've been thinking of the pyramid as Khufu's monument to himself, a display of royal ego. But what if it's actually the opposite? What if it's proof that he's worthy of the divine status his position requires? What if the pharaoh needs this pyramid to work even more than you need the wages from building it? That night, as you lie in your dormitory, you think about the worry you saw in Khufu's face. Tomorrow, you'll work with even more attention to detail, not just because of royal command, but because you've seen how much depends on getting every stone exactly right. But what you don't know yet is that your encounter with the pharaoh will soon lead to something even more surprising. What you don't know is that within a few days, you'll be part of a solution to a construction problem that will demonstrate just how much the success of this project depends on the knowledge and innovation of ordinary workers. What problem could be so serious that it requires input from common laborers rather than just royal architects? It's been 5 days since the pharaoh's visit, and the entire work site feels different. The correction of the alignment problem he identified has been completed with unusual speed. Supervisors who usually take weeks to approve changes implemented fixes within hours. But more importantly, workers throughout the complex now know that their observations and reports matter to the highest level of authority in Egypt. This creates an atmosphere you hadn't expected. Heightened attention to detail combined with genuine enthusiasm. Your work gang and others are spotting and reporting minor issues that might have been ignored before. Site supervisors, clearly under new pressure from above, are responding quickly to worker concerns. But this morning brings news of a problem that can't be solved with quick adjustments. The Grand Gallery has a flaw. You learn about it during the pre-work briefing, when Jetty gathers your team for the day's assignments. His expression is more serious than you've ever seen it. There's been a development, he says. The master architects have discovered a stress problem in the Grand Gallery. They need ideas, and they're asking for input from experienced work teams. The Grand Gallery is the pyramid's most ambitious internal feature, a soaring corbelled vault that leads to the king's chamber, wider and taller than any interior space ever built in stone. You've never worked inside it directly, but you've heard the masons and engineers talking about its complexity. What kind of stress problem? Asks Senab. The weight of the pyramid above the gallery is creating more pressure than originally calculated. There are microcracks appearing in some of the corbelled stones. If they expand, he doesn't need to finish. If the Grand Gallery collapses, it takes the entire internal structure of the pyramid with it. The project doesn't just fail. It becomes a disaster that could literally bring down the government. Why are they asking us? You ask. We're not architects. Because, says Jetty, you've been moving and positioning these stones for weeks. You understand their behavior under stress in ways that architects who only work with calculations might not. And because we're running out of time to solve this, the situation is more serious than you initially understood. Work has stopped on the upper levels of the pyramid until the gallery problem is resolved. Thousands of workers are sitting idle. Materials are backing up at the harbor. The entire project timeline is in jeopardy. And winter is coming. The flood season that brings workers from across Egypt is ending. Soon, these men will need to return to their villages for planting season. If the gallery problem isn't solved quickly, the project faces a months-long delay that could cascade into years of additional work. Your team is taken inside the pyramid itself, something most workers never experience. The passages are narrow and the air is close, lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on precisely fitted stone walls. But when you reach the grand gallery, the space opens up into something breathtaking. The gallery stretches nearly 160 feet long and rises almost 30 feet high, its walls formed by stone blocks that corbel inward course by course until they nearly meet at the top. It's like standing inside a giant stone tent, but one carved from solid rock with mathematical precision. And it's absolutely beautiful. The stonework is so precise that the joints between blocks are nearly invisible. The surfaces are polished smooth. Light from torches placed along the walls creates patterns that emphasize the geometric perfection of the construction. But you can also see the problem. Hairline cracks are visible in several of the corbelled stones, particularly where the gallery's weight-bearing system connects to the rest of the pyramid's internal structure. Master architect Himiunu is present, the pharaoh's nephew and the overall designer of the pyramid. He's examining the cracks with instruments you don't recognize, making calculations on a papyrus scroll, clearly frustrated. The mathematical theory says this should work, he's telling his assistants. The load distribution should be well within stone tolerances. But something in the actual construction is creating stresses we didn't predict. Jedi approaches respectfully. Master Himiunu, you requested observations from the work teams? Himiunu looks up, his expression showing both hope and desperation. Yes, we need fresh perspectives. What do you see that we might have missed? Your team spreads out through the gallery, examining the stonework with the practiced eyes of men who've been handling these materials daily. You run your hands along joints, test the stability of individual blocks, look for the subtle signs of stress and movement that you've learned to recognize. It's Katie who notices it first. Master Himiunu, he calls. This joint here, it's not sitting right. He's found a section where one of the corbelled stones seems to be bearing weight unevenly. The stress crack originates from this point and spreads outward. Explain what you're seeing, Himiunu says, approaching quickly. When we were positioning casing stones, Katie explains, we learned that even tiny irregularities in the supporting surface get magnified by the weight above. This stone, see how it's making contact only on one edge instead of distributing weight across its full width. Himiunu examines the joint carefully. Yes, I see it. The theoretical calculations assumed even weight distribution, but the actual contact area is perhaps half what we modeled. But why? Asks one of his assistants. The stones were cut to specification. You study the problem area more carefully, thinking about everything you've learned about stone behavior under load. Then you notice something else. Master Himiunu, you say hesitantly. Could the problem be movement? What do you mean? The pyramid settles as it's built, right? The lower courses compress slightly under the weight of upper courses. Yes, but we accounted for that in the calculations. But did you account for different rates of settling? The gallery is built into the middle of the pyramid, but one side is connected to the ascending passage and the other side to solid core masonry. What if they're settling at different rates? Himiunu stares at you for a long moment, then begins making rapid calculations on his papyrus. His assistants crowd around, adding their own figures. If the gallery is experiencing differential settling, Himiunu mutters, if one end is dropping faster than the other, then the stress loads would concentrate at exactly these points. The architect looks up with something approaching relief in his face. You may have identified the core problem, but now we need a solution. This is where your practical experience becomes crucial. The theoretical solution might be to rebuild the gallery with different specifications, But that's impossible. It would require demolishing and reconstructing massive portions of the pyramid. What if, suggests Seneb, instead of trying to prevent the settling, we accommodate it? Explain. When we're positioning blocks on the external face, sometimes we use thin wooden shims to adjust for minor irregularities. What if we could install something similar here? Something that could adjust as the gallery continues to settle. Tahotep, who's been examining the stonework silently, speaks up. Copper. Thin copper plates between the stress points. Copper deforms under pressure instead of cracking. It could absorb the differential settling forces. Himiunu considers this. Copper is expensive, cheaper than rebuilding the gallery, points out Jetty. Over the next several hours, your work team collaborates with the master architects to develop a solution. It involves carefully inserting thin copper plates at key stress points, combined with a system of wooden wedges that can be adjusted as settling continues. It's not elegant from an engineering perspective. It's essentially using the practical field experience of stone workers to patch a problem that pure mathematical theory couldn't solve. But it should work. And it does work. The implementation takes 3 days of delicate work, requiring the skills of the finest stonemasons combined with the practical knowledge of workers who understand how stones actually behave under various conditions. When it's complete, the stress cracks stop expanding. More importantly, the solution can be monitored and adjusted as the pyramid continues to be built. Instead of hoping the problem won't get worse, there's now a way to compensate for future changes. On the evening after the gallery repair is completed, something unprecedented happens. Master architect Himiunu visits the workers' dining area. I want to thank the men who solved the gallery problem, he announces to the assembled workers. This project succeeds because of collaboration between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Tonight, your solutions saved the pyramid. The entire dining area erupts in cheers. But more than the recognition, what strikes you is the acknowledgement that ordinary workers contributed essential knowledge to the project's success. That night, as your team celebrates with extra rations of beer provided by grateful administrators, you reflect on what's happened. You've been part of solving a problem that threatened the entire pyramid project. Your practical knowledge, combined with that of your teammates, provided insights that even master architects couldn't achieve alone. Think anyone will remember this? Asks Katie. I mean, in the official records, will they mention that workers helped solve the gallery problem? Tahotep laughs. The scribes will probably write that Master Himiunu brilliantly resolved an engineering challenge through his superior knowledge and divine inspiration. Does it matter? You ask. We know what happened. Our teammates know. The pyramid gets built correctly. But as you lie in your dormitory that night, you think about something else. You've been here for nearly a month now, and every surprise has been the same. This project is more sophisticated, more collaborative, more respectful of workers' knowledge and welfare than anything you could have imagined. Yet you know that stories told about pyramid building in years to come probably won't reflect any of this reality. They'll speak of slave labor, impossible engineering, mysterious techniques lost to time. They'll miss the actual story, that the pyramids were built by free workers solving complex problems through collaboration between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. What other surprises await in your remaining weeks at Giza? And what other misconceptions will future generations have about what you're really doing here? 6 weeks into your service at Giza, something shifts in your understanding of what you're doing here. It's no longer just a job, even a good job. It's become something closer to a calling. You wake each morning eager to see the progress made overnight by other shifts. You examine each day's assignments not just for the work required, but for the challenge of doing it better than yesterday. Your team, The Friends of Khufu has developed a reputation for innovation and precision that makes other work gangs want to collaborate with you. And today, you're going to do something that will last forever. Final casing stones for the eastern face, Jetty announces during the morning briefing. These are the last blocks that will be installed in this section before the polishing crews take over. Everything we place today becomes part of the pyramid's permanent exterior. The weight of this hits you differently than previous assignments. Every stone you've moved so far was important, but these stones will be visible and untouchable for millennia. No future worker will ever reposition them, adjust them, or correct mistakes. They have to be perfect the first time. But there's something else about today's assignment that makes it special. These final casing stones will be among the last to receive their interior faces carved with the work gang identifications that have become traditional. Once installed, no one will see these inscriptions except future architects studying the pyramid's internal structure. Gang marks, explains Senab as your team examines the stones assigned to you. Every work gang signs their blocks. Started as a way to track which teams were responsible for which sections, but it's become more than that. He shows you examples on stones from other gangs. Some are simple, Crew of Khufu or Gang 7, Eastern Face. Others show creativity and humor. The Drunkards of Menkor, Men of the Sacred Mountain, those who love the Pharaoh. But some gangs, Senab continues with a grin, get creative. He leads you to a stone that's been set aside for final inspection. Carved into its inner face, in hieroglyphs that required real skill to execute, is an inscription that makes you laugh out loud. The Friends of Khufu, may his pyramid stand forever and his beer never run out. We're allowed to do that? Asks Katie in amazement. More than allowed, says Jetty. Encouraged. Master Himiunu says that workers who take pride in their individual contributions do better work than those who feel anonymous. Gang marks make every team responsible for their specific stones. You spend the morning positioning your stones with even more care than usual. Each block must fit perfectly with its neighbors, must align precisely with the pyramid's geometric requirements, must be placed so that final polishing will create a seamless surface. But this afternoon brings the moment you've been anticipating. Choosing your gang mark. Your team gathers around the final stone of your assignment, tools ready for carving. The inscription has to be on the inner face, the side that will never be visible once the stone is installed. It has to be readable by future workers who might someday need to identify which gang placed which stone. But beyond those requirements, you have complete freedom. What should we say? Asks Katie. Suggestions fly around the group. Some want to emphasize the honor of serving Khufu. Others want to mention the technical challenges you've overcome. A few propose jokes that make everyone laugh but probably aren't appropriate for permanent installation. But then Tahotep, the oldest and most experienced member of your team, speaks up with a suggestion that surprises everyone. What if we tell the truth? What do you mean? What if we write something that explains what this really was? Not the propaganda version, not the simplified version, but what we actually experienced here. You consider this. What would that inscription say? What truth about pyramid building do you want preserved in stone? After considerable discussion, your team agrees on an inscription that tries to capture the reality of your experience. The Friends of Khufu, Free Workers of Egypt, placed this stone with pride in the Great Pyramid's construction. Year 5 of His Majesty's reign. We worked willingly, ate well, learned much, and served with honor. It's longer than most gang marks, but it says something important. It establishes that you were free workers, not slaves. It mentions pride and willing service rather than forced labor. It acknowledges learning and good treatment rather than suffering and brutality. Carving the inscription becomes a team effort. Tahotep, who has some skill with hieroglyphs, sketches the outline. You and others take turns with the chisels, each contributing to letters or symbols. By the time it's complete, every member of the Friends of Khufu has literally left his mark on the pyramid. But as you step back to admire your work, you realize something profound has happened. This isn't just an inscription, it's a message to the future. Someday, perhaps thousands of years from now, someone might read these words and understand something important about how the pyramids were really built. Think anyone will ever see this? Asks Katie. Maybe, says Jetty. If someone ever needs to study the pyramid's internal structure, they might find all our gang marks, but probably not for a very long time. As your stone is prepared for final installation, you watch other teams making their own inscriptions. Each gang mark reflects something different about the men who carved it. Some are purely functional. Others show humor, pride, creativity, or personal beliefs about the project they're completing. But together, they represent something extraordinary, a record of individual human beings who contributed to one of history's greatest achievements. Not anonymous slave labor, but named teams of workers who took enough pride in their work to sign it. That evening, as you watch your stone being moved into its final position on the pyramid's face, you feel a satisfaction unlike anything you've experienced before. Somewhere inside that monument, now invisible and inaccessible, your words are carved in stone. Your name, or at least your gang's name, is permanently part of the Great Pyramid. But the day has one more surprise. During the evening meal, Master Himiunu makes another of his rare appearances in the workers' dining area. Tomorrow, he announces, we reach a milestone. The pyramid reaches 2/3 of its final height. The structural work is complete. Everything from here to the top is casing stones and finishing work. The dining area fills with excited conversation. 2/3 height means the project is firmly on schedule. It means the techniques you've all been developing are working. It means the pyramid will be completed on time and to specification. More importantly, Himiunu continues, we've proved something that hasn't been attempted before. We've shown that free workers, properly organized and supplied, can accomplish projects previously thought to require massive slave labor. We've developed techniques that will be used for generations of future construction. He pauses, looking around the room at hundreds of workers. When this pyramid is complete, it will be more than a monument to Pharaoh Khufu. It will be proof that Egyptians can accomplish anything when we work together with skill, pride, and common purpose. That night, lying in your dormitory, you think about everything that's happened since you arrived at Giza 7 weeks ago. You've learned construction techniques that didn't exist when you left your village. You've been part of solving engineering problems that threatened the entire project. You've contributed your own innovations and improvements to work processes. You've formed friendships with men from across Egypt who share your commitment to excellence. And you've left your mark, literally, on something that will outlast every empire that comes after it. But your time here is almost over. The flood season is ending, and you can feel the change in the air. Soon, you'll return to your village, to your farm, to the rhythms of planting and harvest that have defined your life. What will you take with you from this experience? And what will you tell people about what pyramid building is really like? More importantly, when the stories are told and retold in years to come, when the reality of your experience gets simplified into myth and legend, what truth will survive about what you and thousands of others accomplished here? The answers to those questions await in your final weeks at Giza, as the pyramid nears completion and you prepare to return to the life you left behind. forever changed by what you've experienced at the greatest construction site in the world. 10 weeks into your service, and the pyramid has become a mirror. Not metaphorically, literally. The completed sections, now covered in polished white limestone casing stones, reflect the desert sun so brilliantly that you need to shield your eyes when looking directly at them. From the harbor, approaching boats can see the gleaming faces from miles away. At dawn and sunset, the pyramid glows like captured fire. This is what you're helping to create, not just a tomb, but a beacon visible across the entire Nile Delta. Your final assignments focus on the pyramid's upper sections, where the work is more delicate and the margin for error even smaller. Each stone placed here affects the pyramid's final geometry. Each joint influences how perfectly the apex will align with astronomical markers. Each surface preparation impacts how flawlessly the finished monument will reflect light. But this morning brings news that changes everything about your remaining time at Giza. The Pharaoh is coming for the capstone ceremony, Jetty announces during your team's briefing. Not just an inspection this time. He's going to personally oversee the placement of the pyramidion. The pyramidion, the pyramid's capstone, is the single most important block in the entire structure. It's made of granite, carved to perfect geometric specifications, and covered in electrum, a gold-silver alloy that will make the pyramid's peak shine like a star. This placement marks the completion of all structural work. When? Asks Zenab. 3 days, which means everything we're working on now has to be perfect before then. No adjustments, no corrections, no second chances. The Pharaoh will inspect our work personally before the capstone is placed. The pressure is enormous, but so is the honor. Your team will be working on sections that Khufu himself will examine in detail. The stones you position over the next 3 days will be among the last structural elements the Pharaoh sees before his pyramid is declared complete. You throw yourself into the work with intensity that surprises even you. Every joint is checked and rechecked. Every surface is examined for flaws. Every measurement is verified against the master plans. Your team works with the precision of jewelers, treating massive stone blocks as if they were precious gems. And the attention to detail pays off. When the pre-ceremony inspection begins, your section passes without comment. The highest praise possible from Master Himyunu's quality assessors. The morning of the capstone ceremony dawns clear and windless. Perfect conditions for the delicate work of positioning the pyramidion at the pyramid's apex, nearly 500 feet above the ground. You're positioned on the pyramid's upper working platform, close enough to observe the ceremony but far enough away to avoid interfering. From here, you can see the entire construction site spread below, the workers' city, the harbor with its boats carrying final materials, the surrounding desert stretching to the horizon. But your attention focuses on the approaching royal procession. This time, Khufu arrives with full ceremony. Standards carried by guards, priests with incense burners, musicians playing processional music, officials in their finest regalia. This isn't a working visit. This is a state occasion marking the completion of the greatest building project in Egyptian history. As the procession ascends the pyramid's ramps, you get your second close look at the Pharaoh. But this time, instead of the worried, focused expression you saw during his previous visit, Khufu looks triumphant, confident, vindicated. And why shouldn't he? The project that began as an unprecedented gamble is now clearly succeeding. The pyramid will be completed on schedule, to specification, with techniques that have been tested and proven. Future pharaohs will have a model to follow. Egypt has demonstrated organizational capabilities that no other civilization can match. When the royal party reaches the working platform, Khufu addresses the assembled workers. Not just your team, but representatives from every gang that has worked on the pyramid. My friends, he begins, and that phrase alone is remarkable. The divine Pharaoh is calling common workers his friends. Today we complete something that has never been attempted before. Together, we have built a structure that will stand for eternity. Together, we have proven that Egypt can accomplish anything. He gestures toward the Pyramidion, waiting on its special platform. The electrum covering blazes in the morning sun, almost painful to look at directly. This capstone represents more than the completion of my pyramid. It represents the completion of a new understanding of what organized human effort can accomplish. Every man who has worked on this project, from master architects to stone haulers, has contributed essential knowledge to its success. The Pyramidion is attached to lifting ropes and pulleys operated by master riggers. But before the lifting begins, Khufu does something unprecedented. He picks up a chisel and adds his own mark to the capstone. Not a royal cartouche or divine symbol, but a simple inscription, completed by the workers of Egypt in the 23rd year of Khufu's reign. Completed by the workers of Egypt. Not built for the glory of Khufu or erected by royal command, but completed by workers. It's an acknowledgement that the pyramid's success depended on the skills and dedication of ordinary people. The actual placement of the Pyramidion is almost anticlimactic after the ceremony leading up to it. The riggers lift the capstone with practiced efficiency, guided by architects who signal fine adjustments until it settles into perfect position atop the pyramid. But when it locks into place, completing the structure's geometry, something magical happens. The electrum covering catches the sun and sends a beam of brilliant light shooting across the desert. For a moment, the pyramid's peak becomes a blazing star, visible for miles in every direction. The assembled workers cheer, not the polite applause of formal ceremony, but genuine celebration from men who have spent months or years making this moment possible. As the royal procession prepares to descend, Khufu pauses at your team's position. The friends of Khufu, he says, reading the gang identifier painted on your tool baskets. I understand you helped solve the Grand Gallery problem. Jedi steps forward. We contributed observations, Majesty. Master Himiunu developed the solution. Observations that made the solution possible, Khufu corrects. The pyramid succeeds because theoretical knowledge and practical experience work together. Remember that when you return to your villages. Remember that you were part of something that required both vision and skill. After the pharaoh leaves, your team spends the afternoon on final cleanup duties. The structural work is complete, but there are still tools to organize materials to secure work areas to prepare for the finishing crews who will handle final polishing and detail work. It's during this cleanup that you make a discovery that perfectly captures the collaborative spirit that has defined this entire project. Hidden behind a pile of finishing stones, someone has carved an informal inscription into the pyramid's bedrock foundation. It's not an official gang mark. It's too crude for that, carved quickly with rough tools. But the message is clear. Built by the people of Egypt, servants of Khufu, beloved of the gods. May it stand forever. Around this central inscription, dozens of individual names have been added over time. Not work gang names, but personal names. Khaemwaset of the Fayum, Senub the stonemason, Tahotep who taught us well, Katie who made us laugh. It's an unofficial memorial created by workers who wanted their individual contributions remembered, even if only by future workers who might discover this hidden inscription. You add your own name to the collection. That evening, the worker city celebrates with special rations provided by royal decree, extra meat, finer bread, wine instead of beer, dates and honey cakes normally reserved for festivals. Musicians perform, Storytellers share tales of the pyramid's construction. Men who have worked together for months say their farewells. Because tomorrow, the seasonal workers begin their journey home. As you pack your few possessions for the return trip to your village, you reflect on everything that's changed since you arrived nearly 3 months ago. You've learned skills that didn't exist before this project began. You've been part of innovations that will influence construction techniques for generations. You've contributed to solving problems that threatened the success of history's most ambitious building project. But more than technical knowledge, you've gained something else. A new understanding of what ordinary people can accomplish when they work together toward an extraordinary goal. The pyramid will stand as Khufu's monument. But you know it's also something else, proof that free workers, properly organized and motivated, can achieve things previously thought impossible. Tomorrow you return to your farm, to the seasonal rhythms of planting and harvest that have always defined your life. But you'll never again think of yourself as just a farmer. You're a pyramid builder, a man who helped create one of the world's wonders. What will you tell people in your village about what you've experienced? How will you explain what pyramid building was really like? And what will happen to the truth when it gets passed down through generations who weren't there to see it for themselves? The answers to those questions await in your final chapter at Giza, and in the lifetime of memories you'll carry home with you. Your last morning at Giza begins before dawn. Not because of work assignments, but because you want to see the pyramid one final time in the quiet hour before the construction site comes alive. You climb the eastern ramp to the highest accessible platform and look out over the completed structure. In the pre-dawn darkness, the pyramid is a massive geometric shadow against the star-filled sky. But as the sun rises, something magnificent happens. First, the electrum-covered pyramidion catches the light and blazes like a beacon. Then, course by course, the polished limestone faces begin to glow. Within minutes, the entire completed sections of the pyramid shine with reflected sunlight, creating the effect of a structure made from captured starlight. This is what you helped build. This is what will stand here long after everyone alive today has been forgotten. Standing beside you, watching the sunrise illuminate the pyramid, are teammates who have become closer than brothers over these 3 months. Senab, whose experience guided you through your first difficult weeks. Katie, whose strength and humor kept spirits up during the hardest days. Tahotep, whose knowledge of stonework taught you to see the subtle signs that mean the difference between success and failure. Jetty joins the group, carrying the final paperwork that officially releases your work gang from pyramid service. Certificates of completion, he says, handing each man a small papyrus scroll. Proof of your service, signed by Master Himiunu himself. These will get you preference if you want to work on future royal projects. You examine your certificate with amazement. Your name, written in hieroglyphs by a royal scribe. Your work gang designation, the dates of your service. An official statement that you completed your duties with skill and honor. It's the first official document you've ever owned with your name on it. Will there be future royal projects? Asks Katie. Always, replies Jetty. Khufu's pyramid may be the largest ever built, but other pharaohs will want pyramids too, plus temples, palaces, administrative buildings. The techniques we've developed here will be used for generations. As the sun climbs higher, the workers' city below begins stirring. Boats are arriving at the harbor to carry departing workers back to their home villages. Finishing crews are preparing for another day of polishing and detail work that will continue for months after the structural work is complete. But for you and most seasonal workers, the pyramid building experience is ending. The journey home reverses your arrival 3 months ago, but everything feels different. The boat is crowded with men carrying the same completion certificates, the same new skills, The same stories of challenges overcome and problems solved. But there's also something else. A shared understanding that you've been part of something unprecedented. As the pyramid recedes into the distance behind your boat, conversations turn to what comes next. Some men plan to return for next year's flood season. Pyramid building has become their specialty, and the pay and conditions are better than any other work available. Others are eager to get back to their farms and families, carrying enough saved wages to improve their lives substantially. But everyone is thinking about the same question. How do you explain this experience to people who weren't there? My wife is going to ask if it was hard work, says one of your boat companions. What do I tell her? That it was hard but not brutal? That we were treated better than most farmers treat their own sons? My village headman will want to know if the Pharaoh is as powerful as the stories claim, adds another. Do I tell him that Khufu knows construction details and worries about engineering problems like a master builder? These are complicated questions because the reality you've experienced doesn't match the expectations people have about pyramid building. The truth is more nuanced, more collaborative, more humane than the simple stories of divine power and slave labor that people expect to hear. When you reach your village 3 days later, the questions begin immediately. Your wife Nebet embraces you with relief and joy, but also curiosity. You look different, she says, studying your face. Stronger, but also more confident somehow. Your children gather around as you unpack the items you've brought home. Your completion certificate, small samples of limestone and granite from the pyramid, a bronze chisel that was a gift from your team, and enough saved wages to buy seed grain for a larger planting than your family has ever attempted. Tell us about the pyramid, Father, your daughter Isi demands. Is it as big as they say? You try to describe the scale, but words fail. How do you explain to a child who's never seen a building larger than your village temple that the pyramid contains over 2 million stone blocks, each larger than your house? How do you convey the experience of standing on a structure so tall that you can see the Nile Delta stretching to the horizon in all directions? Your neighbors are equally curious but ask different questions. Was the work dangerous? Asks Amenhotep, the village carpenter. Were you whipped? Asks old Caillou, who remembers stories from his grandfather about forced labor on royal projects. Did you see the Pharaoh himself? Asks everyone. You find yourself struggling to answer truthfully without disappointing their expectations. They want dramatic stories of suffering and divine encounters. The truth, that pyramid building was challenging but well-organized work, that you were treated as a valued specialist rather than disposable labor, that you saw Khufu as a concerned manager rather than a distant god, seems almost anticlimactic. But you persist in telling the truth, because the truth is more remarkable than the myths. The work was hard, you explain, but not harder than farming in a difficult year. We were fed better than I eat at home. We had medical care if we were injured. We lived in organized housing with our teammates. But surely you were forced to work, insists Caillou. Surely the overseers used whips to make you move faster. No, you reply firmly. We worked because we were paid well and treated with respect. The overseers were more concerned with preventing injuries than pushing us to work faster. Injured workers can't do good work, and the pyramid required good work. You tell them about the engineering challenges your team helped solve, about the collaboration between architects and workers, about the gang marks that allowed every team to take pride in their specific contributions. But you can see in their faces that some of these details are hard to believe. The idea that ordinary workers contributed essential knowledge to the pyramid's construction seems to contradict everything they've been told about how royal projects work. What about the Pharaoh? Asks the village priest. Did you feel his divine presence? This is perhaps the most difficult question to answer honestly. Khufu was certainly impressive, intelligent, knowledgeable, clearly powerful. But divine? That's harder to say. He seemed more like an extremely capable leader managing an enormous project than like a god walking among mortals. He knew every detail of the construction, you say finally. He understood the problems we were solving and the techniques we were using. He treated workers with respect and listened to our observations about construction challenges. It's a diplomatic answer that acknowledges Khufu's capabilities without necessarily confirming his divinity. Over the following weeks, as you settle back into farming life, you notice how your pyramid stories change in the telling. When other villagers retell them to visitors, details get simplified, exaggerated, or altered to fit expected patterns. Your description of well-organized work gangs becomes armies of slaves laboring under the whip. Your account of collaboration between workers and architects becomes mysterious knowledge possessed only by royal engineers. Your stories of innovation and problem-solving become ancient secrets lost to time. It's frustrating but also understandable. People need stories that fit their existing understanding of how the world works. The nuanced reality of pyramid building, free workers using advanced techniques in a well-organized collaborative effort, is more complex than most people want to hear. But you persist in telling the truth to anyone willing to listen carefully. Your children learn the real story. Your close friends understand what you actually experienced. Future workers who ask for advice get accurate information about what pyramid building is really like. And sometimes, late at night when you're lying in your bed looking up at the stars, you think about the gang mark you carved into a stone block that's now embedded forever in the Great Pyramid. Somewhere in that monument, your words wait. We worked willingly, ate well, learned much, and served with honor. Maybe someday, centuries in the future, someone will find that inscription and understand something important about how the pyramids were really built. Maybe the truth will survive even when the simple stories have worn it away. Until then, you carry the memories of those 3 months at Giza, the challenges overcome, the friendships forged, the pride of contributing to something eternal. You're a farmer again, but you're also something more. A man who helped build one of the wonders of the world. And every time you see the pyramid gleaming in the distance on clear mornings, visible even from your village 30 miles away, you know that a small part of you will stand there forever. And so ends the journey of Khaemwaset, free worker of Egypt, pyramid builder, keeper of truths that time would gradually forget. The Great Pyramid did indeed stand forever, just as Khufu promised. For over 4,500 years, it has dominated the Giza Plateau, surviving the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the spread of Christianity and Islam, the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, and the dawn of the space age. But somewhere along the way, the true story of how it was built became lost in myth and speculation. Medieval writers, seeing the precision of the construction, declared it impossible for ancient people to have achieved such accuracy without supernatural assistance. They couldn't imagine the level of organization and skill that you witnessed in this story. Renaissance scholars, impressed by the pyramid's scale, calculated that it must have required hundreds of thousands of slaves working under brutal conditions. They couldn't conceive of the collaborative methods that actually made the construction possible. Modern conspiracy theorists, overwhelmed by the engineering challenges, have proposed everything from alien intervention to lost ancient technologies. They can't accept that the solutions came from the practical knowledge of workers like Khaemwaset, combined with the theoretical understanding of architects like Himyunu. But archaeology has been slowly revealing the truth. In the 1990s, archaeologists Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass excavated the workers' city at Giza, the very settlement where our story took place. They found the planned streets, the organized dormitories, the bakeries and breweries that fed thousands of workers. They discovered the medical facilities where injured workers received treatment. They uncovered the workers' cemetery where pyramid builders were buried with honor, not discarded like disposable slaves. In 2013, archaeologists discovered the papyrus logbook of Mirror, a work gang leader who transported limestone from the Tura quarries to Giza. His detailed records describe the harbor system, the organized teams, the careful coordination required to move materials efficiently. His account reads exactly like the organized operation you experienced in this story. Most remarkably, archaeologists have found the gang marks, the inscriptions carved by work teams like the Friends of Khufu into stone blocks throughout the pyramid. These marks show humor, pride, and camaraderie among workers who took personal responsibility for their contributions to the project. The drunkards of Menkor, the friends of Khufu, the pure ones of Khufu, those who know the white crown of Khufu is powerful. Each inscription is a voice from the past, proving that the pyramid builders were real people with personalities, relationships, and pride in their work. The truth that Khaemwaset and his teammates experienced has been waiting in the archaeological record all along. The pyramids were built by free Egyptian workers, well-fed and well-treated, using sophisticated but comprehensible techniques, organized through some of the most advanced project management systems ever developed. No aliens, no lost technologies, no massive slave labor, just human intelligence, creativity, and cooperation applied to an extraordinary challenge. But perhaps the most important truth embedded in this story is something broader, that ordinary people, when properly organized and motivated, can accomplish extraordinary things. The pyramid builders weren't superhuman. They were farmers and craftsmen and laborers who learned new skills, solved complex problems, and worked together toward a common goal. In our modern world, when we face challenges that seem impossible, climate change, poverty, disease, social inequality, we might remember the lesson of the pyramid builders. We might remember that the solutions will come not from mysterious technologies or superhuman leaders, but from ordinary people applying their intelligence and creativity to problems that matter. Somewhere inside the Great Pyramid, invisible and inaccessible, Khaemwaset's gang mark still waits. We worked willingly, ate well, learned much, and served with honor. It's a message from the past, but also a message for the future. A reminder that the greatest achievements in human history have always been collaborative efforts, built on the knowledge and dedication of people whose names history often forgets, but whose contributions make everything possible. The pyramid still gleams in the Egyptian sun, just as it did when Khaemwaset saw it completed 4,500 years ago, still reflecting light across the desert, still bearing witness to what human beings can accomplish when they work together with skill, pride, and common purpose. And in that gleaming stone, the truth of the pyramid builders finally finds its voice. Sleep well, knowing that you've heard their real story at last.